Start streaming. Let's turn. Okay, that should be working. So I'm really practicing alternate stream setup. So, um, and doing some coding while I'm at it. How you doing, Dota? How you doing, Mr. Anhorn? I almost called you the old name then. I've just spent the last 30 minutes looking around for a cable to then realize that to do what I'm doing now, I didn't need that cable. I need that other cable. I need that cable if I want to talk on my work computer tomorrow. So it's too warm to be messing around with that. Hey Mojo, how you doing? You may be in ads. Bashing bugs. Nice. Nice. It's a good thing to be doing on a Sunday. So I just learned that I have more HDMI cables than I know what to do with. I've filled an entire tub with HDMI cables looking through different boxes. Great, almost had a productive morning, but I'm trying to get back on the productivity train. Yeah. Productivity comes in waves. It's fine. Okay, so does the wife ask why you don't throw out the cables? She would if she knew how many cables I have. Um, but you never know when you need that cable, right? I actually bought a set of tubs and I've got to move stuff around. So I've got a week off coming up. So what I'm thinking is I'll build a cabinet and make it wide enough for the boxes that I've got. And then I can slide them in so I have an organization system for the cables. And then if I ever end up with any more, I can just e-waste them. It just feels wasteful at this point to be getting more and more HDMI cables. I've got a box full of power cables, but I don't have the cable I need. I needed a dual phono to phono cable, and I didn't have one. If I do that, I can um, split my microphone to three systems. My fiance asks why I keep all this old equipment, and my answer is always, "You never know." Exactly. Well, for me, I've also got a lot of old consoles, so wiring these things up sometimes, I just need the cables. Wait, some streams that I just cannot watch in Twitch. Every time I get the video download is cancelled if I click away. It's really annoying. Okay. Um, what have I done today? So what I'm working on right now is the attachment side from the planning items perspective. So what I did after the stream yesterday. So to catch everyone up on this, this is the Agile platform stuff, right? So what I've done is I've broken out attachments as a separate component. What that means is that anytime I want to attach a document to the system, I can attach it without doing with and then associate it with the relevant part of the system. So attachments is a general of behavior. Um, Fast forward to vacation we went on with friends last month. One of my friends broke his phone before the trip. Boom! I was like, "Want a Pixel 3 or iPhone 11?" I felt so vindicated. Yeah, like, yep, go one of them. Um, um, I don't know what the name is on YouTube, but hello. What do you think about React Native, and have you ever tried React Native? I haven't. I've tried some React stuff, but it didn't sit well with me in terms of how you build pages and how you build content. This application is a lot of Angular. Um, right now it won't build, so that's why I'm not demonstrating it. But ultimately, this application is all on Angular. I believe there are people in the chat that have used React. But yeah. So I ended the stream yesterday on getting attachments, say, put into the view component. So the view does have the the attachment file itself. So now what I'm doing is I'm working on the other side of things, which is I've got the planning system. Now I can post the attachments that I'm going to associate. And I'm going to follow the same pattern I do with the projects, right? I'm going to send up, here's what I say is currently there. So I'm trusting the client as kind of the source of truth here. That's something I can kind of reflect back on later. But ultimately, what I'm going to say is, here's the attachments I have that are associated, and then it'll figure out, oh, am I removing these, adding these, etc. So I can change the attachments around. I'm not filming with Angular, but can you explain the difference between Angular and Blazor? Next.js is a React framework that feels similar to Blazor. The difference between Angular and Blazor? Well, I mean, how do I display that? How did I even decide that? Um, well, Angular is a spa, but it's not. Now you can do server-side stuff with it with Angular 18, and if you use extension frameworks like um, uh, this gentleman is using, I can't remember the name right this second, but there are extension frameworks that do server-side rendering and stuff. So I think the new way to use .NET is to use HTMX or Alpine.js. There's all sorts of ways to do this, right? So Angular, to me, the difference is how I'm structuring pages and how I'm structuring content. So with Blazor, what I'm doing is I'm building a component, and the component has code behind, or it does have code in the page. Depending on whether you use a server side, using Blazor server, Blazor client, WASM, etc. That's going to depend how it builds things for you, right? Um, Angular being a TypeScript framework, I kind of like this structuring. Um, I just want to put an API up in TypeScript. Most of the TypeScript frameworks are hybrid these days. I mean, they're all trying to, every time we come up with a framework, it's trying to tackle a problem that person had once, right? Or it's trying to tackle the, I have a problem with the way that framework does its thing, so I'm going to create it again. Um, they're just all different perspectives on um, building um, building the software. Next.js has the app router, which is very similar to Blazor with the WebSocket turned off. So I haven't played too many with them. I mean, to me, the difference between Angular and Blazor is just in the way I'm structuring the application. Obviously, this is a lot of TypeScript on the client. I know where it is. I know it's in the client in this case. Um, the reason I like Angular over something like React is the way I lay a page out, right? So I have a component, I have the code behind file. This is why in Blazor I do break out the code behind because I feel more comfortable when my markup has got very little. See, this is now coming into Angular with its templating syntax. This looks more Blazor-like now, um, but the general feel of laying these things out separately. Um, Hey, Rambling Geek, how you doing? I am invisible only because I'm on my dev machine. I'm on a single PC streaming, and I do not have a camera attached to this PC. Um, so no prompter, no nothing. Um, this is my. It's too warm to have two PCs running to do a stream setup. Um, and I'm streaming because of what I said before. I was losing productivity. Personally, like Next.js, it has the BFF built in, making it easy to handle more complex scenarios for auth and APIs, just my opinion. Okay, so the way you use that then. Okay, let me see if I my understanding of BFF is having a specific API built for the front end. So it's one to one. It's there's no adaptation. That is my general understanding of what BFF means. But the way you use that then says there is actually something different there. Definitely check out Next.js, then you'll find it easy, especially with the recent React changes and server-side components. So I mean, I went with Angular for this application because it's familiar, right? I've used a lot of Angular enough to be comfortable with adding components to it. My layout might be garbage, but yeah, yeah. I kind of I don't mind having different I don't need to align the back end and the front end. Yeah, I mean, water drink water is the perfect one for that sort of stuff. I actually do have something I want to do in water drink water soon. I might do that on that week off because then I can tackle some. I still want to play with the game dev stuff. We tried combining Angular with a content security policy. I struggle because it seems Angular uses inline scripts and styles. I've not done much security stuff. No. So I haven't struggled with anything like that on Angular. But again, in this particular instance, right, what I'm trying to build is I have the GraphQL API, I have the endpoints. So in theory, it shouldn't be too difficult to swap out and build a totally different UI against this. I think my mental challenge with Blazor there is that like using Blazor for that is it feels wrong to be making API calls from C sharp code to an API, and that doesn't feel as comfortable to get all my data and stuff, right? And again, that's why a lot of the Blazor examples show DB context when they're doing server side stuff. Um, yeah. So, so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to get the attachment assigned to the planning item. That's the goal of this stream, at the very least, right? So that basically I can go in, I can say add attachment, um, attach it, and then list it afterwards. And what I'm working on right now is getting the view side of that. So I actually do have the associate attachment endpoint work. I say working. I was doing this at 11 o'clock last night, so I was like, I'll just go through and do the view stuff now while I'm at it. Um, File download, no more Next.js talk. Uh, I mean, we can talk about Next.js. I just don't know what to talk about specifically. Um, because again, it's like there's a million and one different frameworks. There's a million and one different tools to do everything we do, right? Um, and I was kind of saying this yesterday, right, about the where my focus lies, and my general attitude is I could spend days jumping back and forth, um, trying to build new ways, trying to learn new tools, learn new frameworks, do all those sorts of things. But the reality is, if I want to get something done, I kind of have to go with what I know. Now, from past experience, what I do know is obviously I've got a lot more Angular experience than I do other frameworks. Um, so starting from a new framework perspective would be difficult. Um, Next.js has a lot of ways to do the same thing, I think. No, I figured out auth on Friday, so storage is where I'm at now. I use a sample repo that showed auth with Blazor. Yeah. JavaScript tends to launch a new cool framework a lot and isn't shy about deprecating stuff either. But I don't think it's, I mean, I think it's just, again, it's just people have different needs and then they build a framework around the needs and then, you know, they want to get some return on investment. So they kind of open, because if you're in an organization or a group and you build a framework and people invest in that framework, right, then you actually have more people to come and work for you. So there's a great um, benefit to developing a framework. It's just for me, my focus has to be on. I mean, I was kind of lamenting on this yesterday a little bit, and we're now up to 51 projects in this application, right? As a solo developer, this is starting to get extremely difficult to kind of jump around because obviously I do have a lot of different pieces uh, moving around. Do my app at work uses some deprecated context menu library and it's an accessibility nightmare. Mm-hmm. Google deprecate Angular. Not a big deal. So, I don't really. One of the things I do know is from experience that if I can build this application in such a way that the UI can be changed, then I can refresh the UI later. When this gets a bit long in the tooth, I can swap out components with newer pieces. It doesn't matter if I in 5 years' time, if planning is still on .NET 9, right, and um, attachments is on .NET 13 or whatever, it doesn't matter. Um, I can I can manage that. I can add new components into the system using new languages. And one of the things I do want to demonstrate ultimately is adding a component into this system that is in a completely different framework, a completely different language, and just prove that it will work as part of the overall thing. That's why I'm developing this in this way. That's why I think this, rather than doing specific microservices, which obviously come with the same benefit, right? These modules potentially can be application stacks unto themselves. So deprecation of things in the future isn't hard. The UI is probably the hardest thing to deprecate. But even then, if I wanted to create a new look of this application, I could create an alternate view, right? I could create a new set of applications around the view. I could then build all a new UI around that new view application. It would consume all the same data as all the other pieces, and it would work, right? That's one of the things I'm aiming towards, so that I can upgrade or deprecate parts of this system very simply in the future. This is vertical slice or combo some architectures, asking because my project is going to have UX-based modules, feature toggles, or extensions assembly, essentially. Vertical slice. I don't think so. So, fun fact, I don't actually try and align to any specific architecture. I build the software the way that I feel works for me. Now, this is focused a little bit on clean architecture in terms of its layout, but that's only for familiarity, right? To help other people as you're looking at this application, right? There's a lot of it to look at. It gives a bit more familiarity. So if I'm asking about some behavior, I'm talking about something, people have some point of reference to discuss if they have an idea. But I don't actually prescribe to any sort of. I haven't gone and said, "Oh, let me look at this. Okay, I'll mimic that architecture." Exactly. I wish I would do that. I coupled the Blazor too heavily. Be moving away from APIs. I've been removing the ceremony around getting two services to work together. Also, why projects instead of directories, using attachments as an example. Why projects instead of directories? So essentially what I'm treating these as is modules of the system, right? So I'm structuring the actual application in here as modules. So each component, so again, these aren't microservices because they are handling the responsibilities of a thing, right? So we go back to my favorite diagram, which should be open somewhere. Not. So if we go back to this, right? Each of these is a module. So each one of these aligns to this, right? So the behaviors and events that happen within this, domain events happen, the database, the data store, all this is a response is all grouped together. This structure is very similar to my services, just different names. Yeah. So they're isolated. Each one of these could actually have a solution and could be built and run independent of every other component. There's no dependencies between attachments and planning, attachments and teams, attachments and tenant management, attachments and tickets, attachment and view even, right? Each one of these has an API, some application code, the domain, the infrastructure, so the DB context, etc. And then other infrastructure concerns I'm going to label out as such. So these are the Azure components of attachments. As things happen in here, it publishes events to the Kafka instance, which then allows other components to pick it up. So that's why I'm saying this does allow me to introduce new concepts in the future. And I do have a plan. Basically, what I want to do is create some sort of migration service for each of these to create a kind of common data format that I can then use to consume. I can create tools to consume and create a ETL pipeline so that I can start a new service up and say, okay, populate all the data, by the way, from these services, and it will actually go and build all the data out for me. Right, but why the class library for application, domain, and infra instead of directories within your API project? Not because I'm just curiosity. Oh, so you think so rather than having so have one project and then have these as directories? Doing it this way does allow me to make sure that I'm not um so there's some rules about these, right? What can see what, right? So dependencies wise, attachments can see application, domain, infrastructure because the that's the view. It's on the outside of everything. It actually can reference everything, but then domain can't reference infrastructure. So I can't accidentally include a or I can accidentally include thanks to Alt Enter, but I shouldn't be able to include a reference to something I don't intend. So this allows me to not have it allows me to have separation between those pieces in the right way. If I had them in the same folder structure, it'd be very easy to just alt enter and include a reference without actually knowing that included reference and kind of broken that directionality. Could also end up then with circular references to things internally. It wouldn't be too much of a problem, but it would be messy. It's backing in the domain separation by using a language feature. Yeah. So keeping them as projects keeps it organized. It keeps it focused on the actual intent. You can see it at a glance. .NET would now, yeah. Not if I actually did it, if I did dependency injection, it wouldn't until I actually tried to hit one of those things because then it would resolve the dependencies that would resolve the dependencies. I could end up in a mess there. Build time, yeah, build time now it would do if I actually include a circular reference here, it would do. But it's more again, it's more just organization. So yes, it's a lot more projects. Actually, it's funny you asked that though because you. So Nick Chapsos did a video the other day. On I lost a job because of this code base, right? He did this video. And one of the criticisms that so the person was asking, hey, I didn't get this job, and the criticism came back, I'd put everything in one project and blah blah blah. I didn't understand entity framework and whatnot. And you know, it's amusing that because that guy was going for that job, and I don't think he ever gave context on what he was actually what role he was going for, whether it was senior or not. But yeah, it does go to different opinions. I prefer the project structure. You might want to try doing a package upgrade for the whole solution. I find this approach gets super complicated. It's one of the big negatives. Why don't you work right this second? Oh yeah, I can't upgrade. That's deliberate. If I upgrade to that, it's broken. But yeah, in general, I have done it multiple times. I get what you're saying though. Less than 4K. Nice. That's cool. It's very cool. So, okay. So yeah, for me, this project structure, I'm repeating the project structure. It's consistent. It works the same way. Um, like Mr. Van Horn says, though, it can get complicated because it's again, 51 projects. I haven't even scratched the surface of the behavior of this system yet either. So that projects number is going to increase quite substantially. And again, I could actually have these as individual solutions. So if I'm focused on one component of the system, I can actually just keep that solution. And the only thing I need extra is the shared project stuff, right? The shared and whatever. But each solution could actually have, I could have a solution around tenant management, teams, planning, tickets, view, etc., and they would be built. If someone comes in an interview and don't know how to implement a church encoded list, I throw them out. Ugh. For me, one repo equals one solution. But solution is just an organization of files. I'm not going to stick all these in separate repos because that would create a nightmare for management. Just management of the code. And hello, Deflux, how you doing? Um, well, I'd have to have each part checked out when I'm building it like this. I love maintaining 100 plus repos. I mean, most tools now have multi-repo as a feature. Like this does support, I can have multi-repos in here, right? But nope. I, I, I mean, from a deployment perspective, that might actually make sense if they were in separate repos, but I'm not sure I'd want to do it that way. Mm. Spend a lot of money to use like a NuGet host to host your own NuGets. So I do host a NuGet. I use Baguette, Baget. I have a Docker container running for that. So when it comes time to build this out, I will have that deployed. Developing a multi-repo sounds more difficult than making DevOps figure it out. 15 repos, here we come. Well, a repo per package for per project, that would be nightmarish. Hi, Thindle, how you doing? Really wish I could get Jason's stream to stay. Oh, apparently you Felix Schnabel, you mentioned the word NuGet, and it got blocked for bullying. So please don't bully me with your words of NuGet. uh, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm testing my updates to my alternate stream setup. Ah, is it? Okay. I did not know that. I'll have to ask my wife. I'll share that one because you're not trying to be offensive. I know that. I think it's bad one. Yesterday I made the switch to full Linux on my personal desktop. No more Windows outside of work. Nice. I've never like. It's been a long time since I tried to do that. Oh, sorry for the ads. It's a minute and a half every half hour. I'm glad I don't have to worry about my dev platform. I do all work on Windows and deploy to Linux. When it comes time to deploy this, it'll definitely be deployed to, well, my first path will be Kubernetes with on a Linux host. And like I said, I was saying yesterday, from a deployment perspective, I think my only solution right this second is to deploy this locally to, and as I demonstrate it, kind of host it. I have plenty of bandwidth in the house, so I could host it and let people tinker with it once they get to that point. Just work with my friend to make sure the it's as isolated as possible. Fun. Hit me up if you want to help with Kubernetes. This project might be a good learning experience for pulling me. That sounds like a good idea. I would love to do that. Anyway, if you forward, be sure to reserve your prefix on the main site. Otherwise, people can externally ingest stuff into your build pipeline. Spent 1 month closing that whole previous job. Very fun. Oh, yeah. My Baguette server right now is just an alternate host, and I would use that to publish the packages to. These packages would never get published on NuGet. NuGet. Again, there are some external libraries that I've built that help with things like Kafka and my outboxes stuff. Those go into public NuGet, but everything else will be internal. That does sound like a good idea, Mr. Anhorn. Definitely do that. So I got to get past this acquire. Um, acquire attachment dot command. Okay, let's see if this runs. No, it doesn't run. Attachment doesn't exist. Cannot find it. Okay, that's just because I haven't set it up. Um, and I copied and pasted because they are identical. An attachment does not exist. So when I hit acquire, I'm expecting attachment. That's why that is that. Windows is just so clunky. I'm only locked into Windows for work because one framework for, and I develop solutions to use Excel, which has the most accessibility on Windows. But I do recommend trying different distros. As long as we get no forward requests, should be good. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. You're inner Frenchman, huh? Um, just for completeness, by the way. We're not talking about bread. Pronounced the same. But that's a useful thing to have hosted in Docker. Okay. So when an attachment doesn't exist, what I'm expecting is result contains ID, attachment is created. Shouldn't have a name, should have an identifier, should call add async. When we call attachment does not exist. So when acquiring planning item, um, I'm expecting attachments to be a big thing. I mean, I would hope so. I would hope so, in so much as mock-ups and documents and documentation that people create um, externally. Um, um, yeah. I'm trying to learn another language, but it's hard. Next week, my last migration for the summer feels great. Expecting attachment. Yeah, Rust syntax is just so different. Rust is, yeah, interesting. I do have Rust Rover installed, and I've played a bit with Rust. Um, it would possibly be one of the things I would tinker with, as demonstrating a how easy it would be to add into a system like this. What does T attachment mean here? So it's just because I think if I call it attachment, it'll go away. It's just because I'd aliased it and it's giving me the type. So if I give it a meaningful name, it'll stop whining at me. Always the negative vibes. Yeah. So Let's have a look. Let's make sure. I'm waiting for the hype to die down around Rust before I bother, but I heard rumors you can build small SQLs in Rust. Okay, so we did do that. I expected to receive a call matching. Um, so I bet that's going to pass now. Yeah. So the difference was there, and attachment dot name. Yeah, I'm just validating that I created dummy record that has no content to it, right? Because again, this is data integrity, what I'm working on right this second. So what happens is, let's say I attach a document to my planning item. So I've uploaded the document. Now let's say the attachments component is backlogged, so things aren't getting through as quick. The message goes through the planning item, and the planning item's process is running much faster, and the planning item hits the view component, so it publishes the Kafka events. The view component picks up the attachment against the planning item quicker than it's received the attachment. So when this comes in here, I don't want to crash. I don't want to fail. They can be out of sequence. I can prepare the data. So what I do is I insert a record into the attachments table with an empty identifier and default every piece of information. That way, the um, the information is intact. I haven't broken Kafka. I don't have to do any sort of weird message retries, etc. I've got data integrity. At the very worst, what I would see is a blank record on the. I'd see an attachment that's blank on the client side while that other message came in. It's better than the system failing, because when that other event comes in now, it will populate the attachment and all the data will be intact. And ultimately, I can push down to the client and say, "Oh, by the way, this object got updated." So yeah, so I can handle that. You might want to look at using pre-signed URLs pattern, where the client uploads to a specific URL to your storage provider. You might get very expensive. This might get very expensive in the future. Gotcha. So right now I'm not uploading directly to the storage provider, right? I'm uploading to the server and then uploading. So I'm disconnecting the actual storage provider. So I'm always sending it from my server. Um, so that I don't have a client side dependency on the provider. And what I'm going to do is once I've tested this enough, I'll create a local version provider and default to that while in debug, so I don't have I don't have to test as I don't have to be using Azure every time I demonstrate file uploads. But yeah, thank you for the advice there. I do appreciate that. So yeah, right now I think it's 10 meg is my limit, or maybe 100 meg. Yeah, whatever. Um, oof, yeah. 2 gig files. Yeah. The expectation here is this would be a PDF or an image or whatever. And I think I've limited it on the client side to be. This is on the client side. Yeah. Text plain, application PDF or image, right? So it's very limiting. So ultimately what I'll do is I'll create providers for the different platforms I want to support, and then I can swap them in and out. Um, right now it's my preference, not the end users. But you never know. One of the things I do know is that certain customers sometimes like to have control of those files, right? So if I allow a tenant to have personal control over what provider it goes to and provide whatever details, then I could potentially support your attachments get uploaded in your space. I just know about them. and I can reference them later. But I can worry about that down the line. Um, so we can acquire an attachment. So acquire attachment is necessary for doing the data integrity. So now when I go to planning item attachments, when associated attachment does not exist. So this is I'm no, that's not going to be that. This is a new list of DTO attachments. New attachment. Expected attachment identifier and expected associated user identifier. So this is the handler that will actually create this data. So what's going to happen is when the consumer hits the planning item, right now I'm attaching attachments to planning. This pattern is not something I feel wholly comfortable with, but again, I can change this later, right? Um, when it's just IDs and a little bit of information, this isn't too bad. This is requirements is a little bit more involved. I think requirements are going to get broken out later because this has the actual text and that is a lot bigger. You do have a size limit on Kafka messages, and those requirements could become quite extensive. And if I do attach to requirements, then that could again be something I want to reflect back on and change around. So this might not live here all the time, but this doesn't seem too bad right now. So what this is doing is it updates the planning item. And again, it's called update because I don't know if it exists. And as I identified yesterday, several of these things I actually probably want to come back around on because I've supported update in some of them and I've not supported update in others. I have an update for planning item. So update planning items. This one, I get the users, I get the tenant. If I have, if there is no planning item, I create it. If I have a planning item and it's changed, then I update it and I call update, right? So, but I only change the information that is revolving around the planning item here, not the associated data. So this is focused solely on update the planning item, and that's why this attachments one is the same way. Hexic, how you doing? Happy Sunday. Does anybody else get particular streams that if you that, that sometimes just refuse to stay loaded? I have a stream open. Hi Shy, how you doing? No cam because I'm on a different PC. I'm good. I'm good today. It's did it say Sunday and Monday? I hope I said Sunday. I know Hexfix in the UK, I believe, so that's why I said Sunday. If I said Monday, I do apologize. Upsetting people. I don't have a camera hooked up. It is an excuse. It's a perfect excuse. Um, it's actually now I'll switch the playback mode. It was fine. It's if you set it to auto, this streamer streams at 720. Um, but if you set it to auto, it uh, it basically says reload player every time I navigate away, which isn't giving them the view. I'm in the future. I felt better, but recovering fast. Good that you're recovering, Shy. Need to flood the room with cameras like I have. No one needs to see this room's cameras. Right now, this is just chaos. I am not an organized person. I have games and electronics and monitors all around me, so um, that need to get put away or eBayed. Okay, so let's see if we can do this. So this is the ID. If I read all the good, it's good, good. Um, Connie, hello, how you doing? Okay, so we get it. I just need to get more organized. I want to rip up the carpet and put laminate down in here as well, and get some organization in the room. I have to go to France for some business and I almost shot myself in the foot because I forgot to account for time zones when telling them when I'll be there. And I fixed it luckily. Nice. I'm gonna stay long, might sleep a few more hours now that my nose is starting to clear. Rest is important if you're not feeling well, shy. What's with it? No, no, no. Gotta get that thick carpet. That thick carpet is horrible. Well, it's horrible in the summer, nice in the winter. Fine. Did you know time holes exist? I could swear I ended the stream before 4 p.m. I was going with the dog and now it's 6:30. Where's the time going? Yep. That's why I'm on one PC today. We'll pop back if you're still streaming. Going to get some food. Rumble Geek, thank you very much for hanging out. Enjoy your food. Um, yeah, that's why I'm on a single PC today. That's why I don't have a camera because I normally have the dual PC stream set up, but the room is too hot with two PCs running because I have to turn the AC off to have two PCs. And it is currently uh here right now it is currently 35 Celsius. So he's an electrician. Yeah, that's an actual. I need a lot more than just an electrician, unfortunately. Givison, by the way, thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it. 5 followers away from that 1,000. Send one over. Yeah. I'm following Lurkers Unite and follow right now. Electrician's level. Yeah. It is a plan to get it all done. Okay, so expected to receive a call to attachment. So um, what I'm doing here is saying, okay, go get me the attachment, and for each attachment, associate it with the um, the planning item. Um, this is where I get a little bit unsure. I don't think I want. I think I want an associated attachment here. So my my process is getting a little bit messier, bit by bit, day by day, because I'm actually creating so many different parts. Um, right. So I've created associated attachments as a table. This is a planning item ID, an attachment ID, and associated by user ID, right? So these are the actual IDs of these records in here. So I think I want that to be a model. So we go to domain entities. We have attachment. Attachment's the actual file that is. So when I attach something, it goes into the attachment service, gets stored there, uploaded, etc., and then publishes an event, and then the view consumes that to capture the information about it, right? That is not the concern of the planning part. The planning part is to associate um, um, that attachment with a planning item. So I'm not duplicating data all over the place. I'm not doing that. So again, it's might right now it might seem like a bit of overkill to do it the way I'm doing it, but I'm about to follow this right up with attaching um, attachments to requirements. Well, if I do it that way and it's all built around planning items, I'm going to end up with a lot of duplicate code. This way, attaching a file to the system is done in one path. The only work I have to do is do the association with the relevant thing. So this table may change, but yeah. Okay, so this has public int ID. It has public int planning item ID. Public int attachment ID, and an associated by user ID. And that's an ID, not an identifier. So public virtual planning item, attachment. Come on, you can do it. Public virtual user. Planning item, public virtual iCollection, associated attachments, and then contact configuration. With one planning item, that's foreign key. Yeah, I guess K dot planning item ID. I want to make a website using C++ as a backend, but I can't ask to write a backend for it. I know it's a thing. I know people do it. I just have never seen C++ used as a backend. So, okay, so that gives me that association. Check out, oh, what was that guy's name? Bring back CGI, right? Pearl. This is the thing Seto nearly banned me for linking in his chat. Also, you're going to do really well in my stream with that. If Seto almost banned you. Dog doing something you're going to regret, Deflux. So, in this case, I actually want to do a repository for associated attachment. Why don't you like that? Oh, because it's up here, right? So I just want to insert the associated attachment. I don't care about everything else, right? Pascal is pretty simple. Yep. Turbo Pascal and C# share roots. So here, this wants to be associated attachment, right? I don't care about the planning item. That being said, no, I don't care about the planning item because I can do this. Var planning item ID equals await sender.send new acquire planning item dot command with command dot planning item identifier. And then for each attachment. So this will get me a planning item regardless of whether I've got one or not. Me shouts hello to the other side. The quiet YouTube side. I keep streaming to YouTube. Honestly, if you do game dev, YouTube isn't bad to stream to because you will get more hits. whatever I did after when I did the first stream, I got 300. Is it 300? It was a lot of views on that first stream that I did to YouTube on game dev. It's fallen away since, but yeah. Yeah, it'll often put people you follow live streaming up there. Yeah. Learning COBOL because I'd be rich. Yeah. COBOL at work. I don't know. I think I'd choose happy over rich, if I'm honest. So this will get the planning item, right? This will acquire the planning item. And then for each attachment that I send in, var attachment ID equals await sender.send new acquire attachment dot command dot attachment dot identifier isolation token. Rich can make you happy, but happy can't make you rich. Maybe, but all I have to do is COBOL for a year, make a few billion, and boom, I'm done for life. So this is going to be planning item ID is my planning item ID. It will resolve the result int to an actual to the type. Attachment ID, I've got the attachment ID now, and then associated by user ID. I need that as well. So let's go and get the user bar. Oh no, I need that per. Oh, that's a poor design, isn't it? That is a very poor design. No, because I could have attached this. This could be a list of attachments that have been done in the past as well. It doesn't all happen to be from the same user, so it's not bad. Yeah, the COBOL people at work are not paid particularly more than the rest. User ID equals await sender dot send. So this could be something where I optimize this later. Acquire user dot command attachment dot associate by user identifier translation token. So basically cache this because I don't want to keep hitting that. Hexic, I generally keep this stream free of language like that. So apologies. All good. Thank you very much. I don't bother to be rich. I just want to do cool stuff. And when I can make this for everyone, I'll be happy to publish it. But to be bad, I need money to live. Yeah, I mean that's the need, right? I need to be able to make a living. So why did this almost get you banned? Or is this not the one that almost got you banned? All-purpose multi-frame platform framework. I apologize for the ads, by the way, if anyone's caught by ads. I forgot to mention that. I need some messaging in there. Okay, so honestly, what didn't he like? Associated by user ID equals user ID, right? Cancellation token. So what that's going to do is it's going to go when it calls into here. I'm going to this async operator doesn't lack awaits, but whatever. I acquire the planning item. So again, in terms of the data integrity of the system, it's important that I make sure that data exists. So those acquires are kind of a create or create if not exists. And this is a pattern that I debated the need for with a previous colleague, and we kind of landed on acquire. And I do embrace the same idea. So this is the one time that I do definitely send the mediator library in. And I'd love to know if anyone has any other solutions to this problem, by the way. If you have experience of doing this sort of stuff where you have um, distributed systems, so you have out of order messaging, etc., to keep things in line, what techniques have you chosen? I'd love to know other people's views and opinions on this. So, what this will do, it will acquire a planning item. These are all the same. I actually just created a base class from um, an acquire base because this is semaphore because it has to lock it, right? This is should work. Do not do distributed systems this way. Sorry. Is that a constructive addition to the conversation or um, just trolling? Genuinely asking. So that each one of these will say, okay, well, does the item exist? If it doesn't, then if it does, then return its ID. If it doesn't, then go and create one. Um, when I want to have a system that spans and can grow, I just use cloud tools to achieve this, as opposed to building out this style of architecture. I can just use cloud tools. So I know we've talked about using Azure functions and stuff like that. I know that this isn't a particular favorable pattern for you, but how does that solve the problem of so I have an attachment. I want to upload it to I want to upload it. I want to attach it to a planning item. How do you achieve that? I'm asking about opinions and um, approaches to item to data integrity and out of sync message patterns. So if for whatever reason the message for a planning item is delayed, but I get the message to do the associated attachment for the planning item. Yeah. Timestamps only get you so far though. Timestamps would allow me to do idempotency on the messaging. So using a timestamp, I'd say, oh, I've already seen this one. I don't need to touch it. Right. That's what I'm doing. That's the acquire thing here I'm doing here. That's what this is, Hexic. So what's happening is I call it acquire, but basically I have public identifiers. So there's GUIDs that's shared across the system. So this system doesn't know doesn't have an ID. I'm getting the actual internal ID of this system's copy of that data. Yeah, yeah. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm getting those IDs, and that's create that stub item. Like I say, if I have an so in short, I would associate the full task for all implementations of a button click with that button click. Like if I say I have an Azure app service or an API can scale to many millions of users. So you have so if I go actually, am I almost at the point where this is going to build? If this builds, I can go through the process a little bit. And again, I'm genuinely interested. I'm not dismissing any opinions here. I'm asking because my experience of distributed systems is not everyone else's experience of distributed systems, and I'm open to new ideas. Apparently, someone followed, but it hasn't told me someone followed because I'm now up to 996, or someone refollowed. So I can have an Azure app service, and I can have one in each region around the world. And I can have an Azure DB that also in every region of the world. Okay, so but that doesn't. Okay, so let's log out of here. Sign in. Okay. So we go in here and we go to attachments, right? We choose our attachment. When I upload this right now, the way I do this is I upload the file through the attachments service. I then need to associate that attachment with my planning item. The reason being, I'm about to turn around and also be able to attach a document to a requirement as well, right? I don't want the document duplicated. So I upload here, it will upload the attachment. And then when that comes back, that will actually give me this mapping. This mapping I can then turn around and call my planning service and say, oh, by the way, this attachment was associated with you, right? So here's your list of attachments. The benefit of that is my attachments are stored in one place. The database has them. So what you do is create a function that uploads the attachment and associates it with the planning item all in one place. Now the requirements change. So you want to attach it to requirements, or I have a ticketing UI. I want to attach attachments to tickets. The UI does know in this case, it just calls different services. And all that information goes through the services, gets stored, and then comes down into the view. Because again, the view is not the same as the store, right? So I am awaiting all the changes. They are separate acts. So you just chain the actions together. You just have functions to do the things. But what if, so you'd be talking to one data store in your world though. Right. But if you're storing to planning and you're storing to attachments like this, so in that world, if attachments fail, if attachments, it doesn't really make sense to have separate databases. Hmm. It's not about the number of tables it can store. From a maintenance perspective, this is much easier. It's harder to manage overall, but it's much easier from a coding and development practice, right? I can store data in things that are associated with that thing. They have their own responsibilities. They do not share data between themselves. I don't have the risk of. So what I do in a normal monolith, you would have one database because then you'd end up with all the queries against that database. People want reporting, you stick it on that database. This does give me that flexibility to do that. And yes, there's other ways of achieving it. So in your world, you wouldn't do distributed. You would just do, you'd say, okay, well, hit this API or hit this function, hit this function, hit this function, and do those things together and scale them functions up to allow more requests to go through. So the added complexity doesn't pay off. I debate the payoff part. So I know where this is heading, right? So if I want to do a search index against attachments, right? Who's responsible for doing that, right? It's not that difficult to stop using table A in favor of table B in some migration upgrade. I'm not debating that it's not easy. I'm just trying to understand. So again, one of the things I have tried to play with Azure Functions to see how I would achieve some of this stuff. It just didn't make sense, and obviously I need a little bit more understanding. Um, but I'm genuinely interested in different approaches to doing this because it is something that I've spent a long time building different applications, but I've never built a cloud application, right? You can attach an Elasticsearch. So if you want to if you want to be able to search attachments in your system, and you've got a function for saving an attachment, does that attachment function then also inject into Elasticsearch? Which means that function now takes longer. If Elasticsearch is unavailable, what happens? All manner of reasons. Maintenance, an issue with it, data loss is a real thing. Right? Parts of the system become unavailable. I mean, if a part of the application is down, can't trust cloud. Yeah, I wish I could say I hadn't witnessed that recently. You're going to want to plan for like retries and so on. But with a function, you've got a limited amount of time before that retry is useless, right? And what if it's not available before it goes? Service might be degraded, Redis often goes slow from it. Right. So if you're doing an attachment and the same function also is responsible for dealing with Elasticsearch, or you want to add a reporting database, so you want to add metrics, etc. One of the things this does give me is I can say I've got an attachment and any system can consume that attachment and do anything with it, right? So in this case, I'm just attaching it to views, but ultimately I could send it to Elasticsearch. I could send it to a reporting database, and it's all disconnected. The entire application is not backed up behind that happening. Right. Ultimately, yeah, I can actually turn off parts of the system. So if I'm updating planning, right, I could in theory disable the planning component and then have the UI understand this element is actually unavailable right now, right? I could push it down and say, okay, it's gone offline. You can't touch the planning system. It wouldn't prevent me from searching for attachments or adding users or doing any ticketing. I could essentially do that. Super rare case if you do a break and change. Where UI version X doesn't work with API version Y. I wish I could say it would be a super rare case where you do a break and change, but unfortunately, the nature of development means that. Um, yeah, I'd say good software dev can avoid that. Even just add version to the API. Well, API side things, right? Again, right now, this is a gateway with individual APIs for each of these, right? So the gateway is doing the routing. The GraphQL API is just a view, and it actually literally is just a view for the most part right this second, which is working exactly as I intend, right? Because again, this database could be optimized for that read. It's focused on the read concern, whereas these are all focused on just being able to store the objects with the data they need. These are the sources of truth. So I capture these, and everything else is superfluous, right? Um, Whether I can see it, when I can see it, etc. Um, I think the big thing for me is the ability to scale down when there's no customers. Yeah, the issue this holds with this design is definitely one of you can't just turn things off, right? So you end up with those 4 services or 5 or 10 services running all the time. You run with the databases, the Kafka systems. Um, Ultimately pays you to work out how to run this on one instance. But the maintenance cost of that development, tracking all that as one monolith. So, and it's not really one instance, it's as long as it's nice and separated out like you have it, it's easy to maintain. How do you scale Azure SQL Server depending on traffic? Dflix is the Azure specialist. Because to me, it is the reason I'm kind of stuck on that right this second um, is it's interesting to understand different approaches to this, right? Because we all have different experience, right? We've built applications. Sometimes it's we understand um, like you have ticketing and planning and tenant management as just namespaces in the same DB. Well, I mean, I could use schemas, right? These could actually be in separate schemas in the same DB if I wanted to do it, right? Right now, they're all separate databases. I can worry about that concern later. How they get the data does not bother. The fact that they're separated is the important part for me. So I could use different schemas for each one, right? I could create a ticketing schema, a planning schema, a tenant management schema, an attachment schema, and then jump into the correct thing. Um, so the SQL Server just scales down on traffic if I set budget rules. Hmm. Um, but I've seen monoliths. So that's for instance, nice. Yeah, I could host these in one database. I could, and but that would be an implementation concern. I can leave that till later on. Right? I don't need to worry about if I'm storing these as separate databases. I obviously have the luxury of doing it right now because I have all these able to be. They're all hosted in a Docker container, right? The more important part is that they are separated. From a performance perspective, I have seen what happens with databases that are focused on the data and then someone comes along and asks for reporting, someone asks for something else, someone expects a different view of it, etc. They bog down. You end up with writes that are bogged down, or you end up with long running queries or locks, etc. So the benefit of doing this is I can disconnect those extra concerns um, from just the data. So I can store the data, I can get the data fast into the database. I don't lose anything, and now I can do whatever else I want as a incidental. I'm not hooking into change control and stuff like that. Right, but cloud services have a ton of tooling and expertise in that area, such as query performance insights. Right, but again, the database that you use for storing the data and the database you use for querying the data, why should you have a data I've seen too many developers not understand how indexes work, not how understand how those relationships work. I can model relationships differently if I don't have to worry about the fact that I'm querying the data. I can store the data I need to store and I don't need to query it. I can then create views and whatever on a data model that is optimized for that read. So right now these just look like they're associated partner tables, but there's no reason they can't be anything. They can be more. They could attach more information. I could join other things in here, and this is okay here because it's built for this view. As I was saying before, the benefit of doing it this way is if I come later on and I say, okay, I want to build a new UI, I can consume those events that I'm consuming now, build a completely separate view database, and build a completely new UI against it, even off the same data, and the pipelines will just support it because then I can just write the consumers. So there are some advantages to doing it the way I'm doing it. And I don't have to hard code. I don't have to update existing code to do any of that. I can build it all off fresh code. So it does give me some flexibility and power that I know is stuff I've suffered with in the past. So yes, this I understand the distributed systems part of this is a lot harder to deal with. When I've said it a few times over the last couple of days, the complexity of this is such that it is a little bit more than I would want for one developer, right? I'm at the point where this is kind of hard. um, yeah. So our product has clear usage patterns, a lot of traffic, 7 to 15, no traffic on weekends. So like dynamically scale up and down the Azure SQL cluster to match the traffic. We don't run SQL on VM. Nice. Oh man, my eyes are burning. So yeah. So what I'm checking here is repository dot received associated add async. And I want private read only period expected attachment ID equals that was one. No, not period, int. Private read only int expected associated user ID equals uh, expected attachment ID and expected associated user ID. Planning item ID equals expected planning item ID. Yeah. If you already know your current loads, you can use the Azure pricing calculator to work out what will be the most effective config. Nice. Let's stop that running. Oh, yeah, I forgot I did it that way. Ugh. Um, So when attachment doesn't exist, we add it. So what I need to do here is actually need to set up sender dot when s goes to s dot send arg dot is acquire planning item command C goes to C dot identify equals planning item identifier. Yeah, that's what that needs to be. Private read only. Period. Expected. Is that? Da, 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 da. Any cancellation token. I think one of the things I do need to consider is how do I learn um, um, how do I learn more about the cloud way of developing things, right? Like, because that will give me that insight, because that's the thing I'm lacking right now. So I know the way I've developed software. I know the things I've been asked to build. I know the software, the challenges that I've faced. And this is very much about the design of this software is very much the way I've learned how to do this, right? But over time, um, and with different um, different industries, but I haven't attempted and I haven't built anything with the cloud because mainly through fear of cost, losing track of cost, understanding how to limit cost, the time investment for something that I don't have any direct um, need for is a challenge. Ian, how are you doing? About the message on save as file as temporary file, since the upper scope doesn't know the random string on the fly, I think you must return the temp file path. The function should do a thing or return a thing, not both. I don't necessarily espouse that idea. For example, sometimes we return a success code from a command, etc. But have you come up with another solution? Just gone with that solution. Sorry, it's a focus right now. No worries. Yeah, that was I added that just for to see if anybody had any insights how they would achieve that problem, fix that problem, because it is something that doesn't feel right, but I understand. I'm not going to change it right this second. It is as it is. It does what I want it to do. But when you're trying to go up against that sort of guidance, sometimes it flies in the face of it. TT, my friend, what project is this? This is a platform I'm working on for. I term it as Agile Project Management. Right now, it is very focused on the planning. Basically, it is an application to allow me to uh, add requirements. What I'm working on right now, adding requirements. Agile 2, you meant. um, the idea being that this is focused on product team sitting down, documenting out what they think they want, what they think is associated with any screenshots and stuff, etc. Um, they would be able to build all this out, and then stories could be created from this. So it's aimed at um, guiding them through that requirement gathering process. Or developers get near it. So I'm slowly making my way through this piece. Ultimately, this platform will be ticketing, planning, and stories. And yeah, I've been building it for about 9 months. Just to share, here's the budget approach. Say 25 gigs of data in Azure SQL. Um, you can expect around $5 in cost. Huh. Yeah, maybe I just need to sit down. I know you're talking to Phil Schnabel about the SQL stuff, but maybe I do need to sit down and try and build out an application using cloud functions and see how architecturally it would differ. So yeah, but yeah, TT. This is a quick overview, obviously, but I'm more than happy to describe more. Using a lot of technology. There's a lot of code. This is not open sourced, and um, at this point, I don't think open sourcing it would help anybody. Um, there's just too much of it to understand and to set up to even get it to run. The time limitation you spoke about for Agile functions on the super budget serverless tier, but it's not a limitation for a premium tier. But the entire concept of functions is one of short-lived requests, right? They're not meant to be long-running processes, and the more you're doing them, the obviously the you run the risk of a function kind of disappearing halfway through processing, or if you're waiting on asynchronous requests, etc. Yeah, right. Understanding the limitations. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Um, maybe you and I one day can sit down and go through, like, come up with some small application um, that we could build together that we both have context of, and you can sit down and walk me through setting it up and doing those sorts of things. I'll sit right down right now. I'm not doing that now. That's uh, my brain is in no place to do that right in a second. But yeah, maybe one day we can do that though. Do it live, do it. Absolutely not. So what I'm doing here is I'm setting up the test data to validate um the this is configuring the I have an associated attachment, so I'm sending in an attachment, right? This is what I've got. And I expect to see it added to the system. I'll also go live. If you do it live, I will also go live. That seems like something we should plan. Um, I kind of have a focus to get this done today. As tempting as that actually is to get you to go live. User.command C, go to C.identifier. Did I really call it user identifier? Yeah, I did. We're going to do a quick refactoring. So this pattern here, right? This acquire user doesn't need to be. I can cut this down now. So you see, acquire attachment is a little simpler. So I should be able to just do this, and then I can change that to user, and that's an acquire command, and that becomes user. That becomes user. That becomes that. Yeah, in all seriousness, defaults, I would want to kind of you come up with an application idea that's quick enough that we could do in a stream. And what is that complaining about? I have one right now. um, okay, so that's view-base. Oh, view-base doesn't implement. Oh, I can't refactor that. Yeah, I can't. As much as I want to refactor it, I can't do it because I don't have I've not been consistent in my data pattern there. So that's just an annoyance. C.user identifier equals expected associated user identifier. Oh, I've got any cancellation token. The cancellation token does matter. I'm expecting it, but expected attached associated user ID. Hello, Twitch world. It'd have to be it'd have to have substance. There's no point with no substance. So that should run. It might fail, but it'll run. Nope, it does. It creates. So there's a fundamental problem with this. If I have existing associations and they're not sent in, I need to remove the association. And I think I missed that in the planning item part. So actually, yeah, when project is already associated, right? So in this case, project is added, project is removed. I think in this case, I remove all and then I apply the new ones. So I'm wiping them out and adding them in every single time, just to make sure the data's in sync. I'm not jumping through hoops of figure out what's different and add in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that up later. I'm probably going to follow the same path, which might seem excessive because obviously I'm going to delete everything and reapply everything every single time. But it does mean that I always have the current state and it is the view database. So that should be okay. As always, if you're new to the stream and you have any questions about what I'm doing, or if you're not new to the stream, if you're old to the stream, no worries, Defless, you're more than welcome to ask. I'm happy to show around. Right now, I'm focused on some unit testing around this behavior because I want to get this behavior in place on the client side. So I'm about to move to the client side. Yeah. So, but I'll come back around on this later because I need to go through and do the wipeout and do something similar to associated projects. But I think from a behavioral perspective, it does make sense to kind of do it that way, where I wipe out what was there and add back in. And it's just this data. It's not the primary data. Although that does churn the IDs of this quite substantially. That's probably not a good idea. Now I'm thinking back on it. So associated projects, yeah, every unique ID. So that means every time I update the projects, it's kind of cycling. So if I have 6 projects attached, right? it drops all these records and then reinserts the records. So these IDs are going to cycle pretty fast over time. But then I don't necessarily need a primary key on this table, as I always need planning ID and project ID. So I could potentially drop the primary key off the table. Because it's a compound primary key, right, of these two. This has to be unique. So I might want to reconsider that. So again, here, I probably don't need an ID. But again, I can fix that up later. So let's build the application and run the application up. And then we'll move over to the client side of things. This is where it gets tricky again. So I now need to send to the server that the attachments have been changed. Right. And this is where my signal store knowledge might not be where it needs to be, but hopefully by the end of this project I'll have a lot more understanding and at least enough knowledge to understand where I've done it wrong. So I need something similar to add requirement, right? I'm going to need async add attachments. Um, so what this does on the server side, let's see how I actually did it. So again, when I upload an attachment, it uploads through attachments. That deals with uploading it to my provider, which in this case is Azure Storage. And that is just uploading the attachment. I get an ID back because I store a publicly shareable ID of that attachment with a file name. I'm now going to say, okay, now I want to associate that thing with the planning item. So I have this endpoint here for attachments where I send up, here's the attachment IDs of this object, right? In there, I am building a list of attachments, and then that method, the associate attachments, actually goes and figure out what the differences are, right? So it's going to attach them if they need to be attached, not touch them if they don't need to be touched, and remove them if they need to be removed. And then it'll trigger that the planning item was updated, and that will trigger the data store on the other side. So even though I'm calling this add attachments, I brought my phone back. You broke it. Isn't that a new phone? How did you break it? Is it that's a foldable one, right? Memory serves. Yeah, ouch. Um, update attachments. So I'm thinking what I want to do here is planning item identifier. Identifier with a string. And attachments. Actually, it is a add attachments. Attachments. The new one, yes. Oof. I kind of do need this to be filed, don't I? This is going to get messy fast if I'm not careful. So what I want to do is first I want to merge the attachments the planning item currently has with these attachments, right? And then I want to call that endpoint to update the attachments. When that happens, I also need to push in so again, I'm maintaining the store locally. I need to at least make sure that store looks like it's got those attachments so that then I can render the actual page. Then I can worry about the query side of things where I now need to go and get attachments as a view so that then when I load into the page, I see the attachments for the first time. Um, this, this is not free of challenges, that's for certain. Um, so this is an anonymous object, right? The second. I think, though, that is a file. But where is that coming from? Web worker. No, I don't want that. So models. Is it here I want this? My client side code is not structured the way I want it to be. Export interface, attachment. I feel like I've done that somewhere else already. Ah, that's where I've done it. I have already done it. I don't want it there. So attachment there. So how did you break your phone? It's the flux. Patch state, store, step pending. Not sure. Also, it's a um, so actually this goes here. Um, slept on it. Ooh. Oh, you murdered the OLED. Ouch. That's that's a bit nasty, that. Clean, but that didn't help. Yeah. Yeah, that's in a bad way. The worst I have to worry about right now is the button in my phone is the power button doesn't work properly. I have to press it harder and harder. So it's getting old. It's a S24, S20, no S22 actually. So it's probably due for an upgrade next year. So this object is containing all the data, right? Because what I do is I actually load all the data into this model in the store, and that store then I can view certain parts of it as needed in the client. So this does start to bloat the client, but I don't see uh, if so item. So we're going to merge attachments as being the current attachments of that array. Seems wrong. No. Merge attachments with that. No, because that's many, right? That's the what's the word? There's a name for that operator, right? So attachments becomes it's not quite as simple as this one, is it? What? No. Ah, okay, gotcha. I get that. Now I know the noise. I'm good. Mrox, thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it. Um, okay. So this is a bit more complicated than this because what I need to do is I need to merge the attachments. It's gonna work. It's gonna work this way for now, but ultimately, if I upload the same file, it's not going to differentiate right this second. There's nothing on the server saying, "Oh, here, by the way, the file name's different." So that's okay. This should work. So what don't you like? Um, must have a simple iterator method that returns an iterator. So what am I missing there? I'm doing something. Yeah. I item attachments. Oh, that's why. I'm not doing this test. So item dot attachments. If it's that, then that's okay. Otherwise, it's attachments. Right? So if I've got attachments, I'm going to merge them together. Otherwise, I'm going to um, use what I passed in. So then on the planning item service, I need to do that. And then what's going to happen is once I've done that, I'm going to merge these changes in and say, yep, this is good. This isn't going to return any IDs to me because I don't care about the IDs. That seems wrong. Result. Why wouldn't I care about the IDs? Because I've got the identifiers already of the attachments. All I'm doing is associating them. So I don't need to know about, I don't need the associated IDs. So that's why that's okay. Okay, so we can create a method, update attachments over here. So these services merge GraphQL and data update concerns, right? So I'm using the API, and ultimately they'll all go through this one thing. That's the idea. Right now I have GraphQL is configured on a different port. Do you think it'll fix itself? I'm gonna say no because it looks like you killed the OLED. So looks like you put some strain on that hinge and wrecked the OLED. That ain't good. It's not my fault. If you slept on it, it kind of is. That's what I like to see. A bit of personal accountability. Okay, so we're going to upload the planning output. We're going to send, here's your current attachments, right? This is all mapped fine. The difference is what I pass into this endpoint is not, it's just a list of GUIDs. So I just need the attachment IDs. So I just need, right? That's all I need there. So let's have a look. Let's see if this is argument of type attachment. Is not assignable to parameter of planning promise type planning item. So, oh yeah, item. So we're gonna update the planning item and send it back, right? That's part of the promise. Still getting my head around client side promises, observables, all those sorts of things. The RxJS stuff is mind-boggling at best for me. So in here now, we should be able to do store dot update attachments. And there we go. So this dot store dot update attachments. Why don't you have update attachments? Add attachments. That's why. Because I call it add attachments, not update attachments. Because for this side of things, I am adding these attachments. It's not the responsibility of this to care as attachment. Okay, so this is the mapping. When I actually add an attachment or a group of attachments, it will return back a dictionary with the file name and the identifier that I attached to it. So again, in this data store here, when I add attachments, I get back this identifier plus this file name. So I get back a mapping dictionary of those things. Right now, it's not looking for duplication on the same tenant with the same file name. I could make that happen, but again, what happens is this is actually saved as the file name on the Azure storage. So it's a unique identifier. What are you using to store the actual file? Right now, it's just an Azure storage container, which we went into the other day. So I'm in attachments. We have a storage provider, and we just store it under the tenant. We have a file name, and that's it. That uploads the file. As far as I'm aware, what this should do is allow it so that if you click on if you were to download the file directly using its name, its path, if I allowed that, right now I don't, it would download and it come down with the file name that you actually sent. Yeah. So the way this is built is I can swap out this storage provider, and that's deliberate. So I can create an AWS storage provider later. I can create other storage providers. I will create a local storage provider for debug because I don't want to keep just sending dozens and dozens of files to Azure storage. I know it doesn't cost that much overall, but yeah, it's worth keeping an eye on. Um, Apologies for ad breaks. I do run them every 30 minutes for a minute and a half to try and keep pre-rolls off. I think pre-rolls are definitely difficult for people who are just joining the stream to be able to catch up with what's happening. So thank you for watching them if you were stuck in there. I use OneDrive so it would live inside Teams. Yeah. So this is the simplicity of that. So I just didn't need to implement a storage provider and then set it up. So basically have a Azure storage provider set up, and it does it pulls the credentials. Right now, I'm using the secrets to pull the account key from. Um, I've got to learn a little bit more about the best way to store that and use that. And again, I'm only using one of the keys, and they recommend rotating the keys, so that's going to be again another thing to learn about because that will create a security loophole. So with that done, as it stands right this second, what I should be able to do is go in here. This should load. Probably need some loading screens. Go in here and go to attachments. Choose my file. Upload my file. Oh, it errored. Method not allowed. You know why? So I'm using Ocelot for my API gateway. Um, if you're, I've got a lot of dark mode screens on. If you are in a dark room, I recommend looking away now. But I'm going to share it on stream just because it's useful to see. It's about to go very bright. Um, so the Ocelot configuration, this is what gives me my routing. So that's why I warned. I have no dark mode for this. And I don't have plugins on DuckDuckGo. So I have the API attachments. The API attachments are there, but I don't have the planning item version of that. So what I need is to have another route for this one. So if I do attachments there, and this will allow me, this will say, okay, well, I've matched this route. I'll send it towards the planning items API onto this URL, right? So I can get rid of the word API when I've got these services up and running. So that will allow that now. So let's get away from that screen. I apologize. I do need to make sure I keep track of that. So when I go over here, I save these files locally or as part of the repository so that I can check them out and apply them in an environment. So and I don't lose those changes. Then I should be able to retry that one. Oh no, I can't. I need to reload the gateway. Although I shouldn't need to rerun the gateway. I don't think I should. That's funny. Showing that screen, I lost the viewer number dropped down 6. Replay SHR. 405 method not allowed. API. Oh, because I'm using put. What a donkey. Um, that's a client side problem. Um, in add attachments, no navigation properly there. So in my right feature here, I go into here, I go to update, and I've used put. I'm sending the current state of the attachment, so I think post is perfectly fine here. Does mean I'm going to have to upload that file again. Go here, attachments, choose the attachment, upload. There's our breakpoint. So we hit this endpoint. And we're in our handler actually. So we're actually in our. Tell me you failed. You did fail. You absolutely failed. Why did you fail? The entity type attachment requires a primary key to be defined. If you intend to use a keyless entity, call has no key. Okay, so the problem there is if I want to stop, I need to stop planning. Stop planning. So when I go into here, this associate commands, associate attachment. Attachments is attached to the planning item, which is why I love the planning item. It's the way that is. Attachment here is an entity base. It's an entity base, but I don't have a configuration, I bet. So in my infrastructure here, my configuration. Yeah. So I need to go into here and say attachment configuration. So attachment in the planning context is an associated attachment, right? It's a this person attached to this. So ultimately, what I want to be able to do is search for attachments. So if I have a document that's referenced in 3 different places, I don't want to keep bringing that document and attaching it again. I want to be able to say, oh, it's actually I'm not uploading it every time. I'm just saying it's associated. So there'll be a different UI in here for searching and applying an attachment. So attachment in the planning context is actually an association with the attachment. There's no point calling it associated necessarily. It's attachments as far as the planning is concerned. It's the view concept that merges the two back together. So this is an entity. Oh, do I not have my base type available to me here? I do. I do. Entity type configuration. Yes, I do. It's just I've got more fields there. Okay. Um, so the reason I pause there is because back in Entity Framework days, before Entity Framework Core, when you implemented configuration, you implemented entity type configuration. When they went over to .NET Core, it became Entity Framework Core. It became entity type configuration, and there was no base implementation. I've kind of introduced an implementation back, but yeah. So that will be enough to configure that because it's in the context. The context when it starts up will load the assembly, the configuration. That's good enough now. So I can go over here again and start planning items up. So this switches to 9. So in total right now, just my services, there's 10 services running, right? Because I've got the client side running inside of WebStorm. So there's 10 services of mine plus Kafka, console, SQL Server, Redis. Probably some others. RabbitMQ. So 5 or 6 other services. Which looking through it, I was looking through Aspire the other day, and it's more intimidating to do than ever for that as well. So we should be able to retry that one. That one should work. Invalid object name attachment. Why invalid object name? Live. Yeah, Aspire seems attachment. Did I not create a table for? I probably didn't create a table for this, did I? Planning items. Look at already. Oh dear, you worry me. So again, the planning items is going to have a table called attachments, but that, and it's really associated attachments, but I've flipped on the name a bit apparently. Um, so we have ID, that's a primary key. Um, this table, because it is um, managed by the system, so the system is it's an entity base, so it has four properties by default. It has an identifier of its own, which might not be relevant. This is kind of unnecessary, I think. Why do I do it this way? I may review this later. So it has identifier, which is a unique identifier, not null. It has um, planning item ID. This can be an ID because it's in the planning item system. It knows about that directly. It can have what's that column called? Associated by user identifier. That's a GUID because I don't have the concept of users in planning items. I don't need users in planning items. I just need to know that. Do you have a template how you structure your code? Um, there is a structure to the code. There's no particular template for creating these things. I'm using it as I'm kind of adapting as I go. It's a big thing I do have about making sure I'm writing the code that I need to write and not what I think I need to write all the time. So I'm happy to adapt and to flex the code. So there's no real template. There is a structure to the code, right? Because if you look at the actual overall application structure, they follow. So there's a lot of patterns that are consistent in the system. Um, in this particular case, I have a data pattern that I'm a little wishy-washy on. One of the things it doesn't panic me to do that because I can come back around and change any one of these components, and as long as they produce the same data to the rest of the system, which is still valid, how I store the data in an individual component doesn't really matter. So I can go and write scripts to migrate data within internally, or I can change the structure and all sorts of an individual piece. But it doesn't matter as long as my external interface remains the same. So, and that's a very consistent piece. So I'm using Kafka to publish that information. They added time, not null. That's not going to matter from the .NET side of things. And last updated date time, that's nullable, right? There we go. So attachments here, generate details clipboard. And I'm not using migrations because migrations create a much harder problem for me with the number of databases I'm dealing with. So I don't fancy that challenge. So I'm not using entity framework migrations. There's nothing to stop me once I get to a good place with the data schemas to do the migrations and start from that point. But while I'm changing things and moving things around, I just don't want to mess around with running migrations to do this. But I am trying to make sure I keep consistent on creating the scripts to make sure the schema can be recreated. Attachments. .SQL. Okay, so now that's in place. Can I retry that request once more and see if it goes through? No, you still don't like that because invalid object name attachment. So let's stop that part running. Planning. Domain entities attachment. Infrastructure context. I don't. Public DB set. Attachment. Start that one back up. That's running. Let's try that once more. Oh, you failed again. Can I insert the value null into column ID? Modified table. Identity. That's what I was missing there. Identity. So here's how we do this. We go here. We go here. We do that. We call that attachments. DK. Right. We copy that. We drop that. We create a new query. We run that. We try that once more. There you go. It finally worked. Okay, so what should have happened there is I should have got an attachment in there. So now there's our attachment. It's saved. I should have a notification out box that the planning item was updated. So, yeah. Right. So I got that processed. I should have a Kafka message saying the planning item was updated. Similar time. So there you go. There's that. And what that should have then is in the view side of things, if things are working, which I doubt they are. Yep, there we go. Not there. That's a lot to ask to make sure that all that comes together, considering I haven't. This is the first time I've chained it together. But it did get produced from the other side, right? So there is a Kafka message waiting. If I go into the debug and I look at my services view consumers, I'll probably see an error in here somewhere. There you go. Unable to cast object of type int64 to int32. So I did try and find the attachment, but I couldn't do it. And this is an interesting one. So let's stop the view consumer running. That was attachments, wasn't it? Somewhere in here, something is still an int that shouldn't be an int. Yeah, I don't have the concept of an update, so that's not a problem. So let's go and look at attachments. Int. There we go. That's why. Big int. Let's go and look at view attachments. I thought I fixed that already. It is a long. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you're new to the stream, more than happy to answer questions on things. If you want me to look at something specific, if you want to know how I'm doing something or achieving something, I'm happy to divert and talk about things. I just don't do it all the time because it's difficult to just look at the entire project as a whole. Okay, so the view consumer failed on getting 32. So unable to cast object of type int64 to int32. Okay, so that was not that. So I'm querying something I think is an int32. Domain entities attachment long. That's fine. Content length, content type, date time, big int. Oh, I bet I know why. VBase has an integer ID. This does not support an integer ID. This is a big int because I could have many attachments. So I need to support the same thing I have on the other side, which is the ability to have a variable view base. Okay, so the way I did this before, let's stop running consumers. We can just stop the part we need. Everything else can stay running so I can still demonstrate the application if need be. So what I've done before is that becomes object, right? Then we put public abstract class view base of TID, which is a view base. And then we do that. That overrides. Is that? No, that's not what I mean, right? Non-nullable is uninitialized. That's fine. I think that's because of that. Then we need oh, this is tricky because of the way I built this out. So what I did before, so I have entity base in a shared kernel. And what I did end up doing is keeping entity base intact, and entity base is that. And then I have identity. Yeah, that's how I did it. So I do public interface, I view entity. These all go there, right? Without the public. The thing I don't like about what I'm doing right this second is um I am I'm modifying the code to support a need that I'm not fully evaluating whether I need it or not. Public new ID, public new TID, ID, yep, set. And then I believe we're looking at someone that's read a book on domain-driven design and understood it. I wish I had. This is taking me close to some of the concepts. One of the things I do know is that my entities are not entities. I need to separate out the data behavior from the behavior that I attach to it. So I do end up with some aggregates at some point. Things like the planning item is an aggregate because things like requirements and attachments, well, requirements specifically, don't have any value independently. Requirements can only exist because the planning item exists. So there is some aggregate behavior in there. I just don't know how to correctly model that at this point. So what I call an entity is basically, some cases it's more value object, some cases it's more aggregate, but I haven't really split them out as yet. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of set a defined goal here. Getting this done. And I can move forward with this. So again, in this one, I created the interface and then I created a specific implementation of that thing. Now, this object has a lot more behavior to it. The view doesn't need this in this specific thing. What I'm ultimately aiming for here is um, kind of this to be the bottom and um, this is a view base of int, right? That keeps everything else intact, right? If I do it this way, um, is an I view entity TID. Yeah, that implements the actual interface. Ugh, why did you do it that way? I just want the implicit. I want the implicit stuff. Oh, because I allow get set on this side, and I don't do it on the other side. Uh, T key. That helps. Call it T key. I view entity. So this implicit implementation should, yeah, that should work overall. ID, get is going to return ID set ID equals T key value. Right. So if I implicitly cast my entity to an I view entity of whatever, then, or I actually just cast it to an I view entity, it will assume that I'm passing it the right value. That's fine. What that should have fixed is the fact that this now can be an I view base of long, because that specifies that the ID internally is a big int, and I should be able to restart that. Yeah, that's okay. So it didn't let me restart that because it crashed. The reason being the acquire handler now, this needs to be an I view entity. Uh, result. Uh, T command T key. Entity is a T command. I command handle T command. I'll fix that. That fixes that. That's because that's I view entity. That'll still fix that. That still needs to be a class. I can't have that as a complete interface. And then item is not null. Item Is it T entity? T key. Can't trust that because it can't cast it because it's an object, not a. Because all I know is it's an IView entity, right? But I can do that now, and that will work. Generics, they're fun. Right. Okay, so let's stop the stack running. Let's make sure everything builds and passes tests again, right? Because there's some clear challenges here right now. So this needs to have long. This needs to be that, right? So I have to specify that this is a long type. Um, that's not the end of the world to do it that way, right? Attachment ID. This is where this gets messy because now associated attachment, that's actually a long, not an int. So it gets a little messier. Let's make sure the tests aren't totally broken as well. Um, can I just change that to a long and have it work? It should work. But there's nothing saying that that shouldn't work. This is specificity. Why do you not like that? Because this is a result of int, so that can be long now. That should still pass. Again, that needs to be long. That should still pass. So let's run the tests. This doesn't guarantee anything. Integration is the only way I'm going to know this actually works because of the way that the actual data comes out. But at least the unit test pass. So all the component pieces do what they should do. This spec is not easy because I actually can't validate that it passes the right parameters in. But yeah, so let's go and start the stack and then go from there. Okay, so while that's starting up, I'm going to take a look at some. Application started up. Everything started. So if everything started, I may need to be able to go there. There's my items. My associated attachments didn't get there though. So the planning items did publish an outbox message, right? So I can go here and look at this. This is actually the integration event is the object as it stands. So let's go and open that, and then what I can do is set that to JSON. Then I can format that. I didn't attach attachments. So right now I actually haven't given it anything to work off of. Okay. So why didn't I do that? So data is where I want to start. I want to start at the data. So I did have an attachment. It has a planning item ID. So there is a planning item here. So planning item ID 5 does have that attachment. So when I go to publish the planning item, I have a subscriber here. So now I move these subscribers up a level because they're not specific to. So when a planning item updates or an attachment updates, so associate attachment this will call update. When I associate attachments, I actually add the main event, right? What I'll ultimately want to do is, if nothing changes, if there's nothing to remove and nothing to add, I don't want to send this update here because these didn't actually trigger the update. It's someone else's responsibility. And I believe I have a debounce on the event so that if this fires multiple times, it's not going to actually repeat the event. Um, so when a planning item is updated, I publish the integration, and in here this is I have, because I publish it from multiple places. This is just passing in. Oh, by the way, I got it from planning item updated. So if you look at this here, this will have a event source, and that tells me where in the application this event actually came from. Because I could update the planning item from multiple scenarios. So this allows me to understand which one triggered it, and there's a unique event ID. So, and a codon. So I don't necessarily need to rely upon last updated. I can actually check a codon and capture that as a date, because the codon is when the event was published out of the system. Um, so yeah. So I did an update, but I didn't update. If I go into the published planning item, attachments does have that. However, I bet you, there we go. That's why it didn't load. So there was no attachments because I actually didn't include attachments. There's no lazy loading proxies enabled on here. I have to be explicit about what I'm joining so I can avoid that problem. So let's stop planning items. Let's go in here and go include p goes to p dot attachments. Now let's start planning items back up. Let's go in here. Now, because of the way the application is working, what I can do now is it doesn't matter what I update, just that I update something, because the current state of the object will be passed in the event. So if I remove who this item is associated with, an update, right? Because we know it's attached, we know that works. What we should see is ultimately an event should get here because we triggered that, right? So there you go. There, it's there. It's being processed. It got processed. So if we capture this content again, change data extractor. Got a feeling I've got a lot of behavior to understand in there. Paste that in, reformat the code, attachments. There you go. There's an attachment. So now if we go over to the other side, to here, there's our attachments. We have an error. Invalid object name associated attachment. Well, we have a table, right? Let's stop running the view consumers. So the beauty of the Kafka piece there is that error meant the message didn't actually get consumed. So the Kafka pipeline has stopped right now, right? It won't try and process another message. It will keep trying to send that same one. It won't move on to the next because it won't. I don't commit unless I've completed that event. If I committed the moment I received it and handed it off, then that's a different pattern, right? But I fail and therefore it doesn't process. So I can fix the problem. This is similar to the other problem I had. If I go to the update repository, no, the update context, associated attachments is not there. So if I go and do public db set, associated attachments get set. Actually, I kind of prefer this. It's it just means I get a set which I can then modify data on. I don't really get set that. It um set of associated attachment. I kind of prefer reading that. It's actually quite a nice syntax. It gets rid of the clutter. And it understands it. The EF core understands it. So that's ultimately what I'm doing. I'm just getting the collection. Set tenant. This is the update context. So I have a context for the read, and a context for the update in the background. So these are mutually, these are not the same context. So this one is responsible for all the update data, and this one is when it's talking about associated project, planning item project here. These are actually the view objects, not the data objects. So yeah. Okay, so I should be able to start consumers back up. It should try that message again in a second. Might take a second to do it, but it will do it. Did it actually do anything? I missed it because it didn't log anything. No. It's taking its sweet time. If I go to Kafka, go in here, see attachments, project planning items. And it says there's no lag. Topics. 5 minutes ago. I mean, the simple way to do it is just to update that item again, right? Make sure that message goes through. It shouldn't have committed though. That's not the intention. But basically, if you see this happen, this means that the actual server call has happened, and it updates in here in real time so that it keeps a track. If I was to refresh and it hasn't hit the view yet, it will. Oh, there we go. So now does that have? There you go. There's our associated attachment. So how long have you been working on a project? This is about 9 months. I work on this probably right now, probably about 6 to 10 hours a week. This is the most time I've worked on it in the last couple of weeks in any typical run. But I've probably worked on it since well, Not that one. There. 9 to 10 months. 6 months, 2 months. Main is, yeah, 9 months. So, I mean, I've probably put in several hundred hours at this point, but I don't often work on it as much as I'm doing right now. So during the week, I stream earlier in the day. I stream at 7 a.m. Eastern time. I am US based, no matter what my accent sounds like. Um, and I stream uh, some. I'm trying to learn a bit of game dev on Mondays and Tuesdays, so that I do a bit of game dev on them days, and then I stream this Wednesday through Friday. Okay, so that actually means that I've got all the right parts, right? So I've got my planning item. These are internal IDs. This is an association record. These are actually associated with the attachment. So the attachment there's for associated user. That's user two. That's Jeffrey Winkle. Um, yeah. So this is useful. So now the last phase for this particular component is to show the attachments on the uh, on the UI. So basically, I want to list them here. If I was to refresh this right now, it would work. Um, the well, if I was to update it and test one, it would work because basically what I'm going to do is in attachments here, we're going to say where's requirements? Requirements is there. Um, there, there. If attachments. Um, attachment. Attachment.name. I'm not going to worry about the download right a second. I just need to do this. So, did I do anything special on the outlier, but on the outside requirements? That's the add requirement button at the bottom. If rows two. That doesn't matter. Okay, so if I go back to Liquid Sky dashboard here, let that load. If I add an attachment now and upload, it should. That should trigger. Update identity. Yeah, that should update that ID, that entity. This is going to catch me every single time because what this should do is because it updates the entity internally, and I have an effect here. This should fire. Right. Again, this document. See that fires there because I loaded it. If we go here and choose that and upload, oh, it does hit it. This item, no attachments. Uh, so sorry, it did attach and it did update the entities. So the effect fired. So I know that worked, but the requirement updated. Hold on. Changes attachments is updated. That's more in line. Requirements. Yeah. So that needs to be, why don't you like that? It's not assignable to attachment undefined. What? Oh, that's why I don't need to do, yeah, I don't need to do that, do I? I need to do, I'm attaching the attachments. I'm not rebuilding the object. So I'm not merging. This is the spread, right? The spread operator. This is going to merge. This is going to say this property, by the way, is this. And I'm trying to merge all that in. So I don't need to do that. What I need to do is say, okay, well, if I have attachments, then I need to add attachments. Otherwise, it is attachments. That's my actual array. So if I choose that, upload that, there you go. There's my attachment, right? It's pretty simple. They come up with this lovely mechanism of um, taking a screenshot on a phone, and then it's really hard to work with apps when you want to take a screenshot. So what that just proved is that I updated the attachments on this file, but if I was to refresh now and come back in here, that's not there because that was only added because I was patching my store while I sent that request off to the server. So that I don't have to worry about the server state being intact yet. I know it will be eventually because I've only updated that item when I've confirmed that the server event happened, right? But if I go over here now, I have 2 records. I'll probably have 3 eventually, right? As those others come in, I should have 3 eventually. He says with absolute confidence in this system. Um, oh, the stream. No, he didn't. Okay. Um, I gotta remember that yeah. Okay, I've been muted. Just clicked on the stream tab. So the thing I need to do now to make this work properly is I need to make the UI understand what that looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly sort out uh, something to eat. For some reason, I've got something irritating my eyes, making my eyes water quite bad as well, which is really annoying. Um, okay. Um, oh. So here's what I need to do now. I need to create a view that is going to allow me to pull the associated attachments through. So what I've done here is this gives me the ability to pull for a planning item. I can pull the actual data that I need. I don't know why I'm doing it on planning item identifier either. I don't need tenancy in here because I know which I'm going to filter based upon this planning item. I need the tenant ID. I'm just wondering why I need. Oh, because if I'm creating a view, um, associate attachments. Yeah, I want to condense these down. So associated attachments view. Select star from associated attachments. Where what do I need? I need I need so I need um, I need the planning item a dot planning item ID, comma. We need to join attachments. Join attachments a on a dot attachment ID equal a dot ID. So that's going to give us a dot name, a dot. What I'm going to do is here, I'm going to expose the fields that I'm actually going to be comfortable to share. Because what I end up doing is this view is going to be used to do the GraphQL query on. So I'm going to hide fields off this and control this and format this. And what that allows me to do as well is doing it this way, where I have date times, etc. I can actually format them as UTC, which is always a problem. Content length, a dot, content type. So the challenge on this side is I really need to what is it? There we go. I keep full screening this and then I'm struggling to tab through, and I just need to not be dense, and if I can do that. I have the attachment model. On this side, I kind of refer to MIME type, size, name. So content type, content length. They're more in line with what I do on the other side. At the end of the day, I'm mapping it anyway, so it doesn't really make a difference. Also, I need to get rid of the file upload stuff because that's not necessary anymore. So, name, content length, content type. A dot last updated. Maybe I do want to switch out a yeah, that's what I'll do it. Date added at time zone UTC as date added at time zone UTC as last update. They are stored in UTC, so I'm not doing any sort of weird conversion there. All I'm doing is making sure that the view actually exposes them as time zone offsets. And that means that I will get the actual time come down to the client as Zulu time. Even it is actually that, but it would always apply the offset of the server when I query it out. So this means that I can return UTC. Ankit, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it. Welcome in. So this gives me the attachment information. I don't really need this information, but it gives me the ability to have it available to me. So let's create that view. Now on this side, it's not too much more complicated, right? So what I end up doing is I go into my domain, my entities, my view. I create an associated attachment, right? I need those fields. What I'm trying to think about right now is why I have identifiers on things, but I do need that actually, don't I? Modify view. AA. So we need to join users. Tenant users tu on AA dot associated by user ID. Actually, users u equals u dot ID. How did I get this to tenant user before? Is it the tenant user ID that I have? So look at those view codes. Planning item view. Assigned user ID created by user ID. They come from planning items. Planning items itself, they're the integers that I've figured out. I don't need those fields though. Why do I have those fields? Requirements views created by user ID. Planning item identifier. So hold on, let me go back to these objects. So what I do here is I have, this is the actual object I have, and then I load the view out, and I have these navigational properties still. So I load the actual ID so that I can navigate to the object at the right time. That's why I do it that way. Okay. So I don't need to do this figuring out here, right? I can leave that outside. I can just say AA dot associated by user ID. Copy that. I want to make sure I don't lose the file. 005 associated attachments .sql SQL scripts generate DDL to clipboard. Right. Then what I'm going to do is in my planning item, we're going to have public, virtual, enumerable, associated attachments, and I'm going to navigate over here, and this allows me to specify. That's that's that one. This is the view version of it. Associated attachment needs public int planning item ID, public string name, public long content length. Not going to make that mistake again. Public string content type. Okay, continue. Public date time offset they added. It's important these are date time offsets because they have the time zone, so it exposes it. It looks like a date, but it isn't. So we have those fields. And now in our planning item, we have our associated attachments. Again, these are the views versions of these objects, right? So this is the underlying object. This is the data object. This is the view version, but I'm not going to specify view here. I'm just going to navigate under view there so that they align. I probably am going to change that afterwards, but yeah. Public DB set, associated attachment, associated attachments. It's a set associated attachment, and I've got to make sure I select the view version of it, otherwise I'm going to end up with a problem. Right. So I do need to specify that that object goes to a view, not a table. So associated attachments, attachment view configuration. Now, it might seem like this is a lot of stuff, a lot of work to do just to do something simple. I don't think it is. I think the benefits outweigh the costs right now. In the future, I will be able to construct a UI from a general query. Once this data is flowing through, it is there and it's consistent, and there's a lot of benefits to it. Does it cost? Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of development here, but it's very repetitive. Associated attachments view. So I think there is a lot of benefit. It needs a primary key, so I need to modify that slightly further, right? Although it's a view, it doesn't necessarily need a primary key. So you can actually say has no key, right? there's nothing to index. There's no primary key to index this view on, so it's okay. Public virtual planning item, right? With many attachments. So now what I can do, now I've got that in place, I've got all the attachments and stuff lined up. I'm going to call it attachments so that it looks like attachments. This is an associated project. I probably need to reflect back on my naming conventions and think about what am I actually calling as associated versus because an attachment is associated with the planning item. It's not directly attached to the planning item. And it's a problem with the word attachment as well, because attach. But yeah. Now on the actual query side of this, so I can now add, because I've got planning item, I can now navigate down. So if I was to run this and refresh, so let's run just the GraphQL endpoint. If we go over to here and get the application access token, so edit value, uh, edit value copy, that's that, reformat. So now with the GraphQL endpoint running, I'll open Banana Cake Pop. He says with confidence as it doesn't open properly. There you go. So I'll open Banana Cake Pop. I'll go in here and refresh my token just to make sure. Now, if I refresh the schema, which it was telling me to do, planning items should now have attachments. And I can access the planning item ID, I can access the planning item itself, which is not necessary, right? Name and content length, right? So if I run that, in theory, it will work. In theory. Navigation attachments cannot be added because it targets the keyless entity type. Ah, interesting. With many planning. So with many, that's foreign key. K goes to K dot planning item ID. Let's try that again. I think I set the navigation property in the wrong object as well. Back here, run that again. I mean, I can attach a key. That's not a problem. Let's have a look. I just want to make sure I'm not just knee-jerk reacting and adding that on. That's all I'm trying to avoid right this second. So on the planning item here, oh, did I add the wrong navigation property, by the way? Planning item. No, that one's intact. Planning items view has attachments with one planning item has foreign key. So that's the same navigational property. The as long as it's set in one of them, it doesn't really matter, I don't believe. Has one planning item with many attachments, has foreign key planning item ID. That's okay. Let's, for the sake of this, this does not matter at all, right? So we have a view. It is pulling information. Associated by user ID. It's got the information it needs. Let's go and put um, public int ID. Again, what I'm doing is I'm avoiding the end user or the GraphQL consumer having to go and navigate down the path of, okay, well, I've got an attached document, I've got an attached item to the planning item. I need to go to get the attachment, the association to then get the attachment. So the view is condensing those two pieces of information because to the user of the GraphQL endpoint, the attachment is right there, right? It doesn't need to be um, split out. Uh, so yeah, I'm not. I don't see that I should need to do that, but I have done it. And I probably just need to review the views again. Some of this was done to try and um, prove this out because this is something that I've never really experimented with, and I wanted to understand if it was feasible. And in the end, I believe yes, it was. It's very useful. And I'm going to go a little bit further in a minute because obviously I'm exposing information I don't want to expose. I should not be exposing to the client in any way, shape, or form any internal ID of a table, right? The client should never be allowed to build up off that. So run that now. Oh, you do not like that. The relationship from associated attachment planning to planning item attachments with foreign key properties cannot target the primary key because it's not compatible. Configure a principal key or set of foreign key properties with the compatible relationships. So interesting that. So planning item view configuration. Builder dot has many p goes to p dot attachments with one p goes to p dot planning item. That's foreign key. K goes to k dot planning item ID. Maybe that's just the directionality of my navigation properties. Not sure. This is going to keep tripping me up. The relationship from associated attachment, unless I've referenced the wrong object, that would be a problem. That's the view object. That's the view object. This one is referencing the view. Oh, no, it's not. There we go. That's the problem. There's your problem. So again, in a quest to try and make the the maintainability of the actual project, in I'm costing myself something by not explicitly saying view, right? I'm when I expose the context, I don't want to expose the word view after everything because it's not necessary. It wouldn't make a difference in here because this is interesting. Oh, nice. Dynamic program analysis. Huh. It's giving me optimization information. That's pretty impressive. I will have to review that later. It's keeping an eye on how many times I'm executing stuff, basically, and how I can optimize those. But anyway, I'm exposing these as planning items, etc. ultimately, I'm actually exposing the view version of the object. But if I had the word view on there, it wouldn't. I don't think it would make much of a difference. Um, I could expose it. I think it would come out as planning item view, etc. I could probably manipulate that to be something else, as I'm about to do in other things anyway. But yeah, so let's run that up again. You are not going to help me, are you? Okay, the relationship. So this is the view context from planning item to planning item dot attachments with foreign key properties planning item ID cannot target the primary key identifier because it is not compatible. Configure a principal key or set foreign key. Okay, I gotta get my head around this. So planning item. Ah, that is why I joined on planning item identifier. That okay. As I was looking through it before, I was thinking, okay, why did I use planning item identifier so much? It is because, so I don't need that there. It is because I am discarding the internal IDs and only exposing the public IDs, which is the identifier. So I distinguish between an identifier and ID. ID is the internal. So if I modify this and join planning items P on AA dot planning item ID equals P dot ID, and I do P dot identifier as planning item identifier. Why I keep doing that way? I don't think I need the ID now. I think I can get rid of that because there's no ID there. Go back up to here and back to the builder that has one. Here goes to A dot planning item with many. Here goes to P dot attachments. That's foreign key. K goes to K dot. Gotta fix the object top. I think that will actually probably work now. And there is some there's some refinements I can make here, but again, all this is all view concern, right? If I build the schema differently, if I change the schema around, I don't change the rest of the application. I don't change anything about what I store or how I do it. So I can actually flex all this without breaking any other code. I could build a completely new view and test other technologies just consuming the same Kafka events. And yeah, it would take a little while to set up, but I could do it. I don't have to be beholden to, pardon me, this one way of doing things. Gonna break again. No, unable to cast in 64 to in 32. Where did you go? Wrong. Associated attachment. I bet that is the problem. Because I bet that's big int. Big int. It is. I think in this case it doesn't probably matter very much. And what I'm about to show is an extra piece as well. So yeah, if anyone has any questions about what I'm doing or opinions, I'd love to know how other people do some of these things, right? Um, it's there you go. Attachments, content length. So now we can do content type. You can run that again. And if I go down here and see the attachments, I got the text plain. Right now I can expose the planning item ID. I can expose all sorts of other information, right? I don't want to do that. I also have associated by user ID. I think I need to do the same thing. Users view identify. I think I need to do something similar in terms of um, the user. Although that works fine. Planning item here. Let's stop that running once more. And I can do public int that I create associated by user ID. Public virtual user associated user. Let's try that once more. I want to see if that's going to work fine. That might suffer the same problem as before, but I've got it working in other places. But I can come back and I can review this. I can build upon this. I've got something I can tinker with. I can do you. I can refresh the schema for one. That will help. Associated user. Name, email, right? Format document. Right. Yeah, invalid column name, associated user ID. It's because it's associated by user. Refresh that schema again. Run that again. There you go. So now when I get to an attachment, I've got the information about the user that attached it on an individual basis. So I can drop that. But this also gives me another challenge because now I've got, there's the identifier of the user. But I don't want to expose things like my ID here, right? You can see I can also navigate down the planning item. So what I can do here is I can actually go into my infrastructure and go to the view type. And I can do associated attachment type. And this is object type associated attachment from the view again. And I can do public override configure. He says really confidently. Can do descriptor dot field. F goes to F dot associated by user ID. Ignore. So now I can hide. I can manipulate those view fields, and prevent them showing. Which gives me great flexibility. And again, I'm not changing the data model. I'm not exposing the data model. If I create nesting tables or I create other pieces within, and as long as I keep the view the same, I should be okay. So again, I have an attachment. So Let's actually get rid of most of the other stuff, right? Because it makes it messier, right? So attachments, I have who it was associated by. I can pull as much or as little information about them as I want, right? I don't need the email. I can pull the email out. Now I can't though see. If I refresh the schema again, I shouldn't be able to see associated by user ID. That's the problem. Oh no, 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 no. I need to do one more thing to add the type. Type of associated attachment type. So that adds the custom types in there and allows me to control. I can hide fields, I can map fields, I can do all sorts of other stuff in there to make sure that they come out in the format I want them. And it does give me some great advantages. So again, if I run that, refresh that schema, now I shouldn't be able to select. Yeah, so now that ID column's gone away. So even though it's exposed internally in my model, I can just send it through there. I can also remove planning item identifier because I know planning item identifier. I don't need to add that back in again. I can hide the planning item as well. So if we go back there, I can say descriptor.field f goes to f.planning item, ignore, and descriptor.field f goes to f.planning item identifier, ignore. And that way I can't create some sort of weird recursion through the object tree. Should be good. So there we go. Again, date added comes out at Zulu time. So it was added at 1756 Zulu. So my client can interpret that locally. So there we go. Now, the only thing I have to do is on the client side, I need to modify my GraphQL endpoint to pull that in. And then attachments will have this information loaded because I can just pull name, content length, content type, an ID. I should be actually. That's an interesting challenge because identifier of this is the attachment itself, not the at. Yeah, it works. It works. It works. It works. So I actually need to modify this because that attachment, a identifier is, I think, because that's the attachment identifier. Yeah. I need that to load it up because that identifier actually belongs to the thing. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so progress made. We have attachments in there. I obviously have to just modify on the client side. I have to modify the GraphQL, so I have to go into the store, into the features, into the query, to the service itself, planning items service, and when I'm fetching detail here, now I have to go and get attachments, and I can get all that information, right? So name, content length. ID, that's going to be an interesting one. But it should look like that. But now attachments will be loaded, and when I load into a screen, actually that's worth testing quickly, really quickly. because I do actually have to go. Associated attachment, public period identifier. Can run that. Now, the beauty of the way the system is, I only need the GraphQL part to work to be able to view things. So as long as GraphQL is up, I can actually navigate back and forth in the app. I don't need the entire stack running as long as I don't want to do an update. So we should be able to do that. That should be able to do identifier. I should be able to run that still. You can see I have ID. So that's the attachment ID associated with this content, right? Which is, it is actually correct. The individual the individual attachment does not matter to me at all. It's just that I have attachments. So that means on the client side now, if I was to go in here and navigate here, in theory, that should load. But it's not loading. Oh well. Attachments. Attachments. There you go. It has got attachments. So I don't know why. I don't know why it's not loading. But in theory, it should. So that's GraphQL. But again, because I'm creating the same object, I don't have to create new objects for the detail versus the list. I can actually just ask for different information. So the detail asks for a lot more information. The list just asks for the summary of those things, and they can flex the same view. So it does work. And on the server side, it does actually modify the query based upon what I'm asking for as well. So that's nice. But anyway, that's going to be me for today. I'm going to raid over to Settlix. If you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, if you want to know more, you want to ask more questions, there is a Discord. You can see it in the panels below. Oh, you just got back. My apologies. But I've got lunch to eat, and I don't like eating on stream. So, I did get things working, Rambling Geek. I did get all the attachments are coming through, and I just got a bit of a tie up on the UI. But then basically in the UI now, I'll be able to go in here, choose, go into a different one, choose and upload, upload that file. It will then associate with, this is going to crash. It will associate with the actual planning item, and then I should be able to list them. So some progress. The next steps for this application are going to be a big one. Way bigger than everything I've been working on today. So, but yeah. So anyway, I'm going to read over to Settlix. He's doing game dev, but he does a lot of bot stuff. He does a lot of interesting code. He's been building a game for quite a while, and it's he has a very salty bot that's worth talking to. He's doing bot dev right now. Then awesome. We're going to more dev. Deflux, thank you very much for the conversation. You and I will have to genuinely discuss an Azure project in the future. Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much for hanging out. I appreciate everyone lurking and hanging out today. The only condition is that it's live. Absolutely. We just go agree on the project. So thank you very much for joining me. I will be back tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Eastern to do some game dev. And yeah, I will see you then. I have no shutting down screen or anything today, so yeah. So I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye. Why didn't that accept raid? Why didn't that accept raid? Raid. Why you no work Twitch? Raid. Yeah. It's intended for mature audiences. He swears a bit more. Take care, all. Have a good one.